it is not at all impossible that the sky may one day be an avenue that advertisers take the fullest advantage of. As you guys know, I really don't like Elon Musk. I just don't. I could talk about that for a couple hours, but I'd rather just show you this headline. SpaceX and a Canadian startup plan to launch a satellite that will beam adverts into space. Anyone can buy pixels on the satellite screen with Dogecoin. At 69 Dogecoin per pixel, dude. And by the way, it stays up for 420 minutes. Can we just sort of collectively soy face over this? Like, can everyone just please separate their jaws as much as possible, their eyes wide open? Just really get into it, because Scott Manley did a tweet about this. Let me see. For some reason, the press, and in particular the anti-SpaceX crowd, hey, that's me. Well, I'm anti-Elon Musk, have picked up on a dumb news story about advertising in space, claiming it'll ruin the night sky. This eventuality is already covered by law, and no US-based provider can launch such a payload. No holder of a license under this chapter may launch a payload containing any material to be used for the purposes of obtrusive space advertising. Obtrusive might end up being kind of a contentious word to hang on there. But the statute defines obtrusive space advertising only as advertising that can be recognized without a telescope. Quite possible to ruin the night sky with advertising that is visible only through telescopes for hobbyists among us who use them. I have a couple of points on this. It's literally a 4x4 inch in space that gets recorded and streamed to Twitch. No, the specific project that is being done here isn't so much the issue that I have. The first issue that I have is that this is all incredibly soy, and I'm not backing off that point, and I don't care if it's superficial. There's something really triggers me, like really triggers me about the thin, superficial veneer of nerd culture accessibility that Elon Musk tweets, that he projects, Elon Musk is a cruel, autocratic billionaire who thinks very little of the people who work beneath him. He is not Tony Stark. He is not Iron Man. He is just another venture capitalist who has made an ungodly amount of money by taking advantage of the talent and resources of people who he had the money to hire, okay? Like every other billionaire. He personally doesn't innovate on shit. He pays people to innovate, and even then, the value of his innovations and of the directions he takes his companies is often quite questionable. Like, say, for example, his god-awful Hyperloop. Hey, how do we fix traffic? What if we spent $18 trillion on a one-lane internal highway that is less safe than any other existing transportation plan? The Gamer Tunnel. Yes, of course. So, for one, you have all that. And for two, the fact, all of his tweets are incredibly soy. And he is a union buster. And I do feel like he is a narcissist whose entire career is building towards his eventual dreams of being king of Mars. And we all know, and we all think this. However, do you not think this might be the start of something bad? Or actually, I'll put it another way. Do you really think that there is not going to be an enormous corporate push to overturn existing legislation on the sanctity of space so that advertising can be made evident there? Like, think of any other time in history where the ambitions of capitalists have been effectively curtailed by legislation. Just think for a second. How many times has that worked? Like how much does that work, Now, thankfully, visible space advertising isn't exactly something that we can just jump on into. Logistically, you would have to have a massive, what would you have? Like a satellite with a bunch of telescreens that in low Earth orbit, in a stable orbit that are constantly pointing towards us, and this would be an incredibly expensive endeavor. So I'm not saying that within our lifetime we're going to see like a swarm of big ad bots, in our sky or anything like that. But I am, how do I put this? This feels like somebody jokingly dipping their toe in the water of a really bad idea. But it's like a really big joke and it's the tiniest toe dip. But it's being done by somebody I don't trust at all. You know, it's being done by somebody I don't trust at all. Little tip, you know what I mean? Like little tip. Like for example, Elon Musk's comments about like the brain neuronet stuff. You know, the idea of putting a chip in people's brains. Now that does sound like some dumb sci-fi stuff, and we're not anywhere near some weird cyberpunk dystopia of people having chips put in their brains. But it's a little dip in the toe, very big and scary and dark and deep pool being done by a person who I don't trust. You understand what I mean when I say that, right? Like, when I see stuff like this, my stomach sinks. When other people see stuff like this, sometimes they soy face and they like the Funko Pops that they're holding in both of their hands, they like squeeze it really enthusiastically and the Funko Pops explode, you know, and they shake really hard and the Soylent bottles on their desk sort of fall apart and everything. You know, it just worries me a little bit. It's like Schrodinger's asshole. He's gauging the reaction to see how far he can go. We live with so many problems today. There are so many things we have to deal with, but there are problems that lurk in the future as well. Say we survive climate change, you know. The, I have a sincere fear of premises which are today considered unlikely and almost utopian in nature. You know? Like, today we deal with problems that nobody in the past could have really figured. One of the big psychosocial problems we're dealing with today is that everyone's always on their screen, which means their ability to interact with other people in real life diminishes. That sounds like 100 years ago, it would have been like a crazy sci-fi plot. Actually, 100 years ago, there wasn't even like any premise on which to base that. So it would have been more like 50 years ago. 50 years ago, that would have been like, you know, oh, humans are all latched to their screens. But now it's true. And now we have children who are being handed their iPads at like 4 years old, and it affects their brain development. And this is a real issue, a real thing that is happening. And I don't think the solution to it is just phone bad, but you guys know it's like a thing, right? I don't think we should have a moral panic over it, but it's worth considering. There are consequences. It's not like always reading a book or anything, because the phone, it's not a book, it's access to everything. And at least with a book, you have to read. Reading is a form of engagement. You use your imagination. The newspaper keeps you informed in current events, and you have to read. Watching videos on a phone requires virtually like no brain activity in terms of how much you have to fill in the blanks. It's just information being poured into you. And there's something worth talking about there. Now, all that being said, you know, all that being said, did you guys ever see that viral post? I don't know if this is actually true, but it was some parent saying that now when they're about to go to bed, their kid says, make sure to like and subscribe because they've watched so many YouTube Let's Plays that they think that's the same as saying goodbye. You know? Now, I don't know if that's true. It's probably not because it's almost too perfect in terms of like a salient criticism of like modern YouTube culture. However, while that is probably fake, I think the underlying anxiety that it describes is valid. Does that make sense? So anyway, that's kind of how I feel with this, you know? Now, do I think the sky is going to be explain a little bit more? While that single anecdote is faked, almost certainly, and if it isn't, it's still pretty funny. The idea of humans using like the parasocial media on their phones and iPads and computers as a way of compensating for a deficiency in interpersonal interactions could lead to not only a different wiring in our brains, literally, that's how our brains work. It wires in accordance with events in our lives that teach it to program itself to respond to different stimuli, but it also means that more and more of our interpersonal interactions are going to be framed through cultural norms that are produced through online discourse. We say poggers in real life, don't we? Yes, we do. Every single one of you. Don't lie to me. But it can get worse than that. So basically, don't let the internet parent your kids. Anyway, just when I see stuff like this, I don't think like, oh my God, Elon Musk is going to make this entire sky a Fortnite Travis Scott floss concert within 20 years. I don't think that. But I think that people's natural reaction to this should be, at the very least, one of heavy skepticism and not soy facing. Because it is not at all impossible that the sky may one day be an avenue that advertisers take the fullest advantage of. Like, have you ever walked down a major city street? Oh my God. It is unfathomable. And hey, I've been to Tokyo, okay? Tokyo feels like the end game. All right? I've been in LA, I've been on Sunset Strip. Tokyo felt like the end game, man. When you are literally when you don't have any ad blockers on your computer, like you're using like your mom's family computer and there's no ad blockers and everything is malware, and you open up a bad website and your whole screen fills with 1,000 overlapping, advertisements flashing color and lights and banners. That's what walking through Tokyo felt like to me. And I will admit, there is a beauty to how Tokyo looks, but that beauty doesn't come from the advertising. That beauty comes from the urban design and the spectacular juxtaposition of the old world, like Buddhist and Shinto imagery, with like new, fairly futuristic stuff, and the fact that the city's kept very clean, and the fact that things are older. Like, that's what makes Tokyo beautiful, not all the advertising. And also, by the way, and you should keep this in mind, you know how when you watch anime in Japanese, it's based, but then when you listen to it in an English dub, it's really cringe hearing them like shout out all their attack moves and stuff like that? The reason for that is cultural distancing. When something silly or ostentatious or flamboyant is happening in a different language, it's alien enough to your ears that you don't perceive it in its actual meaningful informational context. Whereas when it's turned into English, all of a sudden you hear how it actually sounds. It's the same with advertising in Tokyo. Let me get a photo up if I could. Tokyo. I'll just Google Tokyo. I imagine that would probably give me the. Yeah, here we go. These famous, famous photos. Can we get a non-low res photo? Thank you. Yeah, stuff like this. So this is beautiful, though I don't think it's beautiful because of the advertising necessarily. But I think it's also worth pointing out when I see this, I see it as a tourist. I went here to Tokyo, and to me, it was like a beautiful kaleidoscopic mirage of colors and lights and sounds, you know? But if you live there, you can read all this text, you can read Japanese, and you see it for what it is. It's advertising. It's not just a bunch of cool lights put there to look good. This is for this store, and this is for that store, and that's for that store. And the charm of pretty advertisements diminishes significantly when you grow cynical to them. Don't you feel that way? Go to Times Square if you have the time to, sometime, and squint a little bit so your eyes are blurred and you can't make out the text. The advertisements are beautiful. They are. In Times Square, the color and the light and the way everything is bridged and sort of framed and blocked and the rules of thirds everywhere you look, it's really, really beautiful. Then open your eyes fully and it's advertising. And all the beauty and color drains away and the cynicism returns and so on and so forth. You understand, don't you? I'm being a little bit allegorical here, but I hope you get the point that I'm making. Anyway, it's something we should be concerned with. I wonder what like future sky advertisements are going to look like. It seems like it's never going to be practical. So let's think. If you have advertisements, physical advertisements in our atmosphere, they would always need to be brought about by a plane or a balloon or some other method of levitation because they can't orbit forever. There's atmospheric drag. Um, that seems expensive. If you have it up in space, you could have it in a permanent orbit. However, you would have to have something be really, 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 really big for it to be visible from the 100 kilometers up. Where does the ISS orbit? What's the height of the ISS? The ISS is 350 kilometers above Earth. 350 kilometers. And that's like a low, low orbit, you know? Do you have any idea how large a billboard would have to be visible to people on the ground from this kind of orbit? Not if they're reflective. Here's a Starlink train visible to the naked eye. Yeah, but it needs to be a discernible advertisement, not just a pinprick of light, right? Yeah. It would why not just orbit closer? I mean, the closer you get to the atmosphere. And even at 350 kilometers, there still need to be occasional adjustments to the orbit of the ISS to make sure it doesn't tumble into the atmosphere. Anyway, so maybe it's not going to be some physical thing. What if it's like I don't know. What if it could end up being some kind of projected hologram or something like that, you know? What if there was some way of saturating some layer of the upper atmosphere or like dispersing a cloud in a sheet uh somewhere, you know, a couple hundred kilometers above Earth, orbiting in like geosynchronously, and then can you do geosynchronous orbit that close? No, you can't. It would have to be non-geosynchronous. And then you like somehow projected light onto it, like beam light. I don't know. I'm sure there are people much smarter than me who have probably been thinking about this for a while. I imagine they probably had some cool ideas. Yeah, maybe like I don't know, like some kind of net mesh that light could be shot into or projected, but not like a physical screen, something that could be folded or collected. Or maybe like a kind of solar sail that could just blanket the. Look, I'm just gonna say this, okay? Everything that I'm talking about is sci-fi right now, but don't delude yourself into believing advertisers are not thinking about it. And I think we should protect the skies we have. And eventually, it is entirely possible that some breakthrough is made and something like this happens. And if it does, I will be very mad at all the people who didn't get at least a little bit upset with the toe being dipped in the water over here. It's just a feeling I have, you know? That's so stupid, nobody would be able to read that. Um, I mean, if it was big enough, you know, gotta be a way. Not to mention, I mean, can you imagine the unbelievable press that you would get from having the first space advertisement? In reality, it would probably be like a $500 million mission or something to get like a gigantic sail up into orbit that you could like cast light through, like a screen that you could use. We already have foldable screens, by the way. There are phones that could do it, and you would have it really, really big, really long, 500 million, 500 billion. But think about it. It wouldn't be done by a company. It would be done by some agency to sell ad space. How much do you think corporations would pay for a day in space? Constantly orbiting around the Earth, everyone on Earth would see it. The ISS rotates around Earth constantly, you know? Like really fast, like multiple times a day. If it was an ad in the sky, you would be getting billboard space to basically every human near the equator, or near whatever band it's orbiting along. Uh, that would be worth a lot of money. About 6 times a day? Yeah, whew. Can you oh god, can you imagine, like, waking up and you look up and it's 10 AM and there's the Coca-Cola space sign and you're like and then, like, later it's 2 PM and it's back above you. It made a trip around the world, you know? And then it's 6 PM and the sun's getting low in the sky, you know? And just, like, forever and ever yeah. Okay, sorry. We have a lot of doomer segments today. We do. I took high school physics. That's impossible, dude. I'm not a scientist, man. Just try to understand the gist of what I'm saying. The point that I'm making is political. I'm obviously not a scientist. The underlying method, I'm not sold on the specific methods. These are just avenues that in the future people will pursue. And also, so much of the shit we do and have today with sci-fi, fucking this is sci-fi. 20 years ago, this was a dream, okay? It's all sci-fi until it happens. Just be wary of the socio-political consequences of particular avenues of technological development, okay? Ryan, end the segment here. Ryan, end the segment here. It's not getting better than this.